This is Coda Radio, episode 164 for July 27th, 2015. And welcome to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show, taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. This episode is brought to you by our two fine sponsors, DigitalOcean and Linux Academy. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our excellent host, who is most definitely established on the East Coast. While ladies and gentlemen, yes, you may have heard, it's the Michael Dominic. Hey there, Mike.
Hello, hello.
Hey, handsome. You know, I thought maybe this would be the week that Jar Jar wouldn't be here. And I actually wrote it down right here. I've got over here, Mike, every Coda Radio, I write down if Jar Jar is going to appear in the Unfiltered Red Book. I just have a little section written off. And right here, I said, no Jar Jar today. Totally called it. Red Book prediction comes true at the top of the Coda Radio program.
It's not a Jar Jar day, nope.
No, we don't need no Jar Jar. So how you doing? Are you feeling okay? Everything just, like the 10-second health update? Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm alive. I was doing a ton of... been doing a ton of native Android programming.
What?
So, yes.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm excited to learn more about that.
In the Android Studio, so that always makes you feel better.
We have a great show today. We really have a great show today. I have something that's super important to talk about kind of coming up just at the top. I won't take a lot of time, but it's really, really big. You grabbed an article from NPR that I also saw over the weekend, so I'm glad you grabbed it. And then this Engadget posted something today that I think has major ramifications for platforms and also for systems that don't have a big app ecosystem, ones that are going to rely on HTML5 apps. And then we got a lot of really good feedback to dig through. So between that, a couple other hoopla items, I got to start with a story, just a brief one. Those of you who follow weekly know that I was down at OSCON last week. Big OSCON, over like 4,200 attendees or close to 4,200 attendees. And I don't know if it was a con crud. I think it might have been. But on Friday, so we went down there Wednesday. I got back Thursday evening. Friday morning, I woke up a little sick. By Friday afternoon, I was feverish, shaking, unable to walk, unable to stand, full on, horribly sick, very, very sick Friday. Had to cancel the Unfiltered show. Went into Saturday. I have a fitness tracker, and basically I'm flatlined. Friday, Saturday, I get up to do LAS. I get through a marathon Linux Action Show that we started recording the Linux Action Show around 9:30. And, we were live around 9. We started recording around 10. We finished up almost around 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It was a monster, and I basically went back to bed and didn't move. And got so sick. I just was devastated. It was devastated. So, it's just been health stories recently. So, it was awful. But I actually feel I'm better today. So that's good. I've been drinking water. And... yeah, like Rikai points out, the final recorded version of Linux Action Show was over 2 hours. And thankfully I felt good enough to do last because I rested up Saturday that it wasn't that bad. And I'm back on my feet now. I managed to walk that line carefully. But that's not actually what Mike, over the history of the Coda Radio program, every now and then I've come on air and I've talked about something that we wanted to do at the network. Something like maybe a project we wanted to work on, or maybe like a soundboard application I needed, or converting the site to Markdown. Like every now and then I've thrown out these ideas and gotten an amazing response. And sometimes they've been really, really great. Like we've had some really cool people help out with some great projects. And sometimes they've just been fun things, like the open your mouth recipes. And so I wanted to maybe try one more time. And I don't know if maybe I'm overstaying my welcome. But I had a really fun idea. So, and this is the first time in an official show anybody's going to hear about this. And it's going to have much larger ramifications for the Linux Action Show. The Linux Action Show is in its 9th year. It'll be approaching its 10th year. And in this transition time, there could be some really awesome major changes coming to the show. Maybe. And a component of that, I need some interaction from the community. I need like a website that the community can interact with to claim sections of a road trip. And so just for an example, I was thinking about an application. It would be a web app that would overlay on top of Google Maps. So here's for an example. There's a highway that runs between the Snohomish County, where the studio is, and to Grand Forks, North Dakota, where Noah's house is. And it turns out to be a pretty popular U.S. road trip. It's about a 2-day, 3-day, 4-day road trip, depending on how you take it. And it's like rated the number 2 road trip in the U.S. And I thought one of the really neat things to do would be to meet up with fans and community members and stop at interesting places and do shows and things like that along this road. And this is going to connect to the changes that are coming to LAS. This transition will be taking place during this road trip. And so it would be really amazing to have essentially fans be able to claim sections of the road trip and sort of maybe determine what happens there. And it could be a way to sort of chronicle the journey. And when we get there, we record something for that person. It's something I'm toying around with, the idea of kind of making a way for different community members to sort of maybe it's a way to raise funds so they could by a donation amount they would claim that part of the journey, or maybe it'd be like through a voting system. And so whatever suggestion got voted to the top, that would be the thing we would do. I'm not sure exactly how that would work. I'd like to see ideas. But the idea I had is a web app that people would go to, that they could mark different things along the map, different points of interest, and say, okay, well, so for example, like, what the hell in this trip am I going to do when I'm driving through Montana? What the hell am I going to do in Montana? And it'd be really cool if a community member could go in here and say, well, when you're in Harlem, I would like to buy this stretch of road, or I would like to claim the stretch of road, or I would like to ask for this stretch of road. I don't know what it would be. And when you're in here, do this. And we go there, we take a picture, we record something there. Maybe we do an episode of Coda Radio from there if it's a Coda Radio audience member. And I think that would be a really, really neat way if we're going to do a couple of episodes on the road if this happens. It'd be a really great way to involve the community, and so I'd love it to have an application for the web that the community creates. I don't know how possible this actually is. If Google Maps allows you to drop down suggestions on top of waypoints, right. And then people to draw grids on there. But I think it'd be a really neat app if somebody in the community wanted. And if you're interested, we have resources over at jbdev.community, and there's different communities there you can reach out to, different folks, including our IRC chat room. And yeah. I don't know. I'm putting it out there. What do you think, Mike? Am I crazy?
It's super ambitious. I mean, there's a lot of practical problems with that.
Oh yeah, I know. But you know what? I'm up for a challenge. I think actually, reviewing it really, I don't think there's anything I can't overcome because during this journey, Noah potentially would be sort of acting as host backup in Grand Forks, being able to actually host shows from there and switch and record and deliver the files to Rekai for editing within a pretty short amount of time. If that would be the backup. So it'd be pretty neat. And so if there were along this journey, there might be like restaurants people love that they saw once on a road trip, or family members that own a place that you'd stop at, or people listen to one of the shows that want us to stop and do a show in their driveway or something like that. Just would be a really neat way for people to claim around their route. And it would be neat if we could do any route. So in the future, we could do a route through Canada, or we could do a route in a different U.S. highway, or we could do even a trek across Europe. It would be a really cool thing, because if it actually worked, I'd be all for it. It's a challenge I've been sort of kicking around for years, actually, and over the last few months, actually worked out some of the practicals, and I don't know. It actually seems kind of doable. Be kind of a neat initiative, I think. So jbdev.community if anybody's interested in getting. Mike thinks I'm crazy. Prove him wrong. I
do think you're crazy, but it could be a fun trip. Very fun trip. Yeah.
Oh yes. Yeah. Oh yes. I think it would be great to do shows on the road. I think it would add some variety to the shows. So like shows like Coda Radio, and basically every show but TechSnap and LAS could be done over a 4G LTE connection. So, and those shows, and LAS and TechSnap, worst case scenario, Noah can do co-hosting backup, and he has those shows handled no problem. The shows like Tech Talk Today, Linux Unplugged, Coda Radio, and these are all audio-only shows that have a chat room recorded. Well, I just have to have an audio feedback into the studio, just like Mike is right now. And I have good equipment on the road, and I have good audio processing for the road. And we have good audio processing here. So, and I would take one of my studio microphones with me. I would take my studio monitors with me, and I'd actually take all the same studio compression settings with me too for the mixer. So, it would actually probably sound pretty darn good. We'll see. We'll see. All right. Well, so before we get into the hoopla, why don't we mention our first sponsor this week? And this is perfect because this is definitely somebody I'd be using all the time when I'm on the road, and that is DigitalOcean. Head over to DigitalOcean and use the promo code CODERDIGITAL and go find out why Mike and I have been using them for a long time now. DigitalOcean is a simple cloud hosting provider that's dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way for you to spin up your own droplet up on their infrastructure. And these droplets are virtual servers with a wide range of power and really a great range of pricing too. Check this out. In under 55 seconds, you're going to get one of these systems spun up. It's 512 megabytes of RAM, 20 gigabyte SSD, 1 CPU, and a terabyte of transfer for guess how much? $5 a month. That's less than I would pay to go get 2 tacos from Jack in the Box and a Diet Coke. Right? That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous for a month. If you use the promo code CODERDIGITAL, you get a $10 credit. You get to try it out 2 months for free. DigitalOcean has data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, London, and a great brand new one in Germany. It's got 40 gigabit E connections to each hypervisor. Their fastest SSDs yet. And the centralized location in Germany makes it great for all its neighbors. So you're going to get really great distribution speeds over there. And to manage all of it, DigitalOcean has built the best UI in the business. There's a lot of people actually, it's so funny because as they try to rip off DigitalOcean's UI, and there's plenty of them that are trying, they get like one element of it. And then DigitalOcean continues to iterate the whole platform. Of course, they've also got their great API available for you, which you can replicate the functionality of the dashboard with that API. And then, because they've had these main staples for a long time and they're well-developed features of DigitalOcean now, not something they're just trying to play catch-up on, but one of their main staple features, there is a ton of great community applications around these things, so you don't even really have to do much. You could, but like just go over to DigitalOcean and look at the community section. First of all, the first thing that's going to smack you in your face is these really, really nice tutorials. Really well built. They pay these people to write these up. Then they have professional technical editors edit these tutorials. So these are really good. But that's actually not what I'm talking about right now. When you go to DigitalOcean, go to their community section, then click on the projects tab, okay? Look at these. These are just available for you to use right now with your DigitalOcean droplets. They can just if you got a $5 a month one, like you're using our coupon, you're using Coder Digital, and you're getting you're using it for free for 2 months. You can still go grab one of these applications. Swimmer is an app for your phone. This Juju plugin makes it so you can manage it from the Ubuntu infrastructure landscape, like with a snap. Mist.io. This is also an API for PHP right here. Command.io. This is great if you use the command. And we've actually got a lot of people that write and say they use Command.io. Basin is another great app. So is this one too. And you go through all of these. They have everything from from applets that you can throw in your menu bar, to Python libraries, to plugins for other online infrastructures, to plugins for Git. This is all stuff that you don't have to do anything. It's already written for you. You can just go grab it. And they have, you can break it out. You can do searches. They have broken down by apps for phones specifically, if that's where you want to go look at some of those. Here's a good one too. The DigitalOcean CLI, which if you use like Quake on your Linux machine, and you can just have the DOCLI running right there. You do, like, I hit tilde, bring it down, execute a snapshot command. It's pretty nice. DigitalOcean.com. Use the promo code CODERDIGITAL and get a $10 credit. Go try out their UI. Go try out some of their pre-written apps. Go use some of their tutorials. Go play with CoreOS. They've got Ubuntu LTS, Debian, Fedora 22's up there now. DigitalOcean.com. Use the promo code CODERDIGITAL. And a big thanks to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. All right, so let's talk about this NPR article. I'll just play. If they got a clip, you have to forgive me. I have to play at least a second or two of it because that's how I roll. It's theater of the mind here. So this is NPR. A major flaw in Android phones would let hackers just with a text in.
Android is the most popular mobile operating system on Earth. Nearly 80% of smartphones run on Android. Woo! Turns out there's a gaping hole in the software, a hole that would let hackers break into somebody's phone and take over just by knowing the phone number. That's according to the mobile security experts at the San Francisco-based firm's Imperium.
All right, so there we go. So that's the story right there. We can stop it there. With just a text, they say. You don't have to do anything else. Just open the attach. You don't have to open up attachment or anything like that. It's just a text. Messaging app Hangouts instantly processes videos to keep them ready in the phone's gallery. So it looks like it's these things like Hangouts that are processing these files. So what do you think, Mike? What grabbed your attention about this?
I didn't even think we needed to cover it fully. Just kind of a heads up, since I know a lot of the audience does use Android phones.
You do, apparently.
I do, yeah. This is an issue, right? And try not to get hit with it. That's all.
Really? That's all you have to say?
That's all I got.
Huh. You know how? So I mean, yeah, I guess because we've said what we need to say about this. It's the real issue comes to more about the OEM fragmentation, not a really
right,
a flaw.
It's
in
the old you can't get the updates without. Yeah, I mean we don't need to go into that again. It's just more of a if somehow you haven't heard of this yet, a little PSA.
So here's a couple of updates as of 2:47 p.m. East Coast time. So just a little bit before we started the show, HTC says Google informed HTC of the issue and provided the necessary patches, which HTC began rolling out to projects in early July. All projects going forward contain the required fix. T-Mobile says these kinds of security fixes are usually released by our third-party device partners, so we're working with them to ensure security updates have been deployed. Wow. Those are both two punty answers.
Yep.
Wow, that sucks. Well, which brings us kind of to the next Hoopla-related story. And I also, it's kind of related to some feedback we're going to talk about later in the show. But also, let's just cover this part of it now. Engadget has their Ubuntu phone review posted. I'm not sure why, to be honest with you. Seems like it seems like a little early to review it, but they have their Ubuntu phone review posted, and they say, basically it boils down to the scopes are a mix between Google Now cards and apps, but it's still like a whole lot of information on demand that you don't really need. It comes across as noise. He basically couldn't use it for more than 24 hours. He gave up. So here's what he writes about the scopes. There are several multi-purpose scopes. In the nearby card, you can tell the phone your current mood, bored, hungry, thirsty, stressed, etc. If you're hungry, the scope will pull nearby restaurants info from Yelp. If you tell it you're bored, and the scope will suggest a nearby landmark, also sourced from Yelp. Show Flickr images taken close to your location, and display relevant Wikipedia articles and suggest upcoming concerts, courtesy of Songkick. The music scope shows on-device tracks, and what's new on 7 Digital, popular tunes on SoundCloud, concert tickets available on Songkick, and what's on YouTube. But he points out that scopes are also customizable, and that scopes are a major departure from the isolated app-based user experience. Canonical didn't see any point in building another app ecosystem, since it didn't believe there was any incentive for people to switch to Ubuntu if it was just the same as every other OS. It wanted to do something different, putting content and services first. The idea is the user has access to all the content they want directly within Scope's interface and doesn't need to jump in and out of individual apps to get at it. He says Scopes achieve that goal. But essentially, he kind of doesn't like the idea. They're supposed to give the user a personal experience and remove their reliance on walled apps and bring content to the forefront, but he says it just doesn't deliver. Or maybe he's just too used to the app-first experience. But he says, my main problem with Scopes is that I feel I'm being bombarded with content. If I want to check out an upcoming concert on iOS or Android device, then I just load up the Songkick app. But when that's not what I'm looking for, I don't really want to see Songkick listings permanently displayed on my phone, like I'm being almost advertised to. You could argue the solution is to remove Songkick feed from the scope it populates, but if it was constantly adding and removing sources from scopes, then they really are that all relevant. I don't see why it's preferable to having a dedicated app. Sure, having so much information available at a glance sounds great, but I spend more time thumbing through scopes than I would want hopping in and out of apps. So he spends more time thumbing through scopes than he would jumping in and out of apps. Multi-purpose scopes feel cluttered, almost like I have several apps running in parallel on the same screen. I doubt the widget-like user interface will work for the majority of people, especially for the limited amount of scopes currently available. Furthermore, scopes are intensely boring. The multi-purpose scopes, particularly, are basically white and gray cards with lists of informations and the odd visual identifier, like an album cover. Even dedicated scopes that allow a bit more color and branding are like spreadsheets for content, and a far cry from the feature-rich and visually pleasing apps on major smartphone platforms. He also has issues with the navigation. Swiping up left and sometimes is too sensitive. He couldn't like when he had the phone in some orientations, he couldn't get to some of the settings because it would activate some of the gesture controls. He feels like the scopes are constantly loading data and causing the system to sometimes run laggy, but he's not quite sure if that's the case. He mentions that he is using, of course, the weaker Aquarius phone and not the new MX4 phone. But He says it's not consumer ready, which doesn't surprise me. He says something that might get you is there's some things in there that are a little confusing in the store. Like in the Ubuntu store, he saw a OneDrive branded app made from a random developer, and when he downloads it, he clicks it, it just sends him to the OneDrive mobile site.
That's fantastic. Yeah, so Ubuntu phone, right? Not the great purple hope we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, Engadget isn't really the right demo for this product at this stage, obviously. But I feel like some of the things he touched on with some of the way you navigate with the gesture UI is some of the same stuff. I ran it on my Nexus 5 for a little while, and I didn't find it super intuitive because a lot of that stuff is hidden until you swipe. And in my experience, a lot of users don't just sort of randomly go around experimenting with gestures.
Right. Well, that was a lot of the Windows 8 problem, right, with the charm.
And they do have a tutorial, but I have to tell you that they're still easily forgettable, and there's still enough of them that it gets complicated, in my opinion. And they sometimes get accidentally triggered. And another thing is it's early days in like even just the way it senses your interaction. So if you're scrolling through a list of information, and say you want to swipe to the next scope, and you decide, okay, you stop scrolling, so you stop the scroll, and then you get a clean horizontal swipe, and you get another clean horizontal swipe, and you start building up momentum, and then your thumb just slips a little bit, and you accidentally get a little vertical lift going, and you accidentally move the screen up or down a little bit, it immediately stops the swipe, and now starts scrolling, and you have to stop the screen, stop it from scrolling, and then build momentum up again and start swiping again, because it's super, super sensitive. Even the slightest minute twitch of your thumb would trigger the vertical scroll and stop your side scrolling. Well, that's kind of a big deal when the primary way you interact with the device is by swiping left and right. So to have that vertical up and down so freaking sensitive when one of the main ways you trigger the app launchers and switch between apps and bring up the settings is by swiping. So that got to be frustrating for me. I feel a little. So Noah was out here this weekend, and he had a Galaxy S4, and we were talking a little bit about it, and we were talking about apps for the watch and things like that. And he was ready to jump from Android for the most part until he tried the Nexus 5, and he seems to be pretty happy with that. And so, Mike, I'm wondering, is it time? I'm just wondering, does the pragmatist in you just say it's time to give up for like the majority of like the North American audience? Is it time to give up on, and maybe just say the West? Let's just say the West. Is it time to give up on Firefox OS and Ubuntu Touch and Yalla for us to ever really consider to be a platform we're going to even try to target? And is it just time to double down on Android?
Yeah, I mean, that's a difficult question.
Kind of feel like that's what you've been doing, though.
The answer is yes. The answer is absolutely yes, right? You know, mobile phones, and I think we're pretty bad about this on the show. We talk about like it's this new hot thing, but in terms of tech, it's not that new anymore, right? In fact, if you look at some of the software that's coming out on tablets, on iOS and Android, there's some pretty advanced things going on. I would dare to say it's a mature market at this point, right?
Mm-hmm. Seems like Microsoft is even starting to admit that.
And if Microsoft couldn't make it happen, I doubt Canonical can. So the question is, right, should someone try to make a third platform? No. But if you're a developer, one-man band or whatever, Ubuntu Phone still, or perhaps more Firefox OS still may be worth your time, right? Even Windows Phone could be, because you don't need that big of a user base. But the smaller the pool is, obviously, you're not doing yourself any favors, right?
Top comment on this Engadget article: an Ubuntu OS not consumer ready? Shocker. Is that the general public opinion now? Is that what's out there?
I'm kind of surprised to even see this article on Engadget. When you added it to the show notes, I was legitimately surprised to see the source.
Yeah, me too. That's why one of the reasons I put it in here, because I was surprised it even. I mean, I guess they're aware of it. It was the editor is Jamie, or the author is Jamie Rigg, on Engadget. I
mean, sometimes I feel like the mainstream tech outlets write off, alternative platforms.
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to get a sense of. So here's what my answer was, Mike, and I was wondering if you agreed. Is Ubuntu going to save us? No. Is Firefox OS going to save us? No. Y'all, no. But is the legitimate third platform, if we're not talking desktop, is the legitimate third platform the web? And so is that really what you have to target? And so these are all just.
Yeah. the web is, in my opinion, now the primary platform, right? That it's your service or project or app or product, whatever term you want to use, really is a cloud service with multiple front ends, right? Now, those front ends may be native apps because that makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons in many, many cases. That front end is almost certainly going to be a website, right? There's going to be a web app somewhere. But it may also be, web-based software on mobile phones, tablets, and hell, toasters one day, right?
And so then does it become who wins? That is so what I think you're saying is on iOS and Android it's going to be native apps, and on Ubuntu and other ones it's going to be web apps.
I think that's a little hard of a line to draw, right? Again, I think the market's mature now, and there's all these options, and people are picking the right tool for the right job, rather than being like, okay, I want to be on iOS, I have to write this in Objective-C.
Yeah, and then of course a lot of them are just pulling down services in the back end that they can just expose with the website on the other one. It just always feels like those are still going to be second-class citizens. I guess that's
right, well, but look at something like Xamarin Forms, which I don't love, right? But if all you're doing is rendering data from JSON and you're not doing anything intense on the client, assuming they fix that crazy Android image view table view bug, then that is a very quick way to get something done, assuming you don't mind paying all the license fees.
So would you ever be willing to try it? Would you ever be willing to try it? Would you dog food it? Would you be willing to try a smartphone that's web app only? Mostly.
How would I know it's web app only?
I mean like a Firefox OS. Would you run a Firefox OS phone for a couple weeks and see how it goes?
If you want to send me a Firefox OS phone,
you do it. You do it. I might try it. I might.
I mean, honestly, what do you do on your phone, right? I mean, I guess it does fall down pretty quick.
I Telegram. Yeah. I mean, I messaging. Messaging's big. Web browsing, Google searching, mapping is pretty big for me.
I think we're missing the forest for the trees here, though, right? So, and get ready, Chris. The pitchforks are coming. Windows RT, Metro, whatever name that we can use without getting sued, was a great platform.
Oh God.
From a developer
you talk for a second, okay? I gotta go close the window. I'll be right back. You keep talking.
It was the best platform from a developer's perspective. The XAML integration. I mean, Xamarin's a poor slave's flattery of what native Windows, particularly Windows RT, was able to do with Xamarin and all of that good stuff, right? C#, perfect, great language. Everything worked well. Async await is a godsend. And it failed. Why did it fail? Well, because people didn't buy the platform. Okay.
Okay, are you done with the Metro stuff? I'm sorry, I had to step away for a second.
I was still Metroing out,
okay.
Right? So I was just saying, from a developer perspective, RT Metro was, in my opinion, one of the best platforms I've ever worked with.
Yeah, I mean, I know there was a lot of nice things you did like about it, but, yeah.
I mean, Reactive Cocoa, right? It's a poor bastardization of the magic that Windows RT was. I mean, we're going to send signals, and we're going to combine them, and no. You want MDVM.
What happened, Mike? You're making me sad. What happened?
What happened? Oh, I know. Is your inner tux like crying?
Well, it just I guess they were too late. $1 short and too late, huh?
Well, this is my point, right? Even though it was an awesome development platform,
I see. You're connecting all the.
It had a lot, had a lot going for it. Even technically, I would argue that if it launched at the same time the iPad, those Surface RT tablets would have been strong contenders because they were good devices. For office workers, for salespeople, for customer service people, I'd argue that if you want to cut costs, give them an RT tablet with an LTE connection. The problem was it didn't matter, right? So Chris always goes on his bandwagon about how the web sucks, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, is that what I do?
Matter, right? Because it's the lowest.
I do that, don't I?
Look what Microsoft had to do. They had this wonderful development tools, wonderful platform, and what are they doing? Oh, now you can cross-compile your Android app. And WinJS, of course. It doesn't matter, right? The users, the developer market, the overall community has spoken. It's the web now. I mean, that's at least your starting point. You may end up
unless you're on iOS, then it's Swift. Unless you're on Android, right? I mean, it's not the web for everybody.
It is, though, right? Because I would argue that any project that has recently been brought to me, we consider, can this be done on the web, right? Because this market isn't new. People aren't going to pay, tens upon tens of thousands of dollars per platform for their app, right?
Yeah.
There's just realities that are at work now.
Yeah.
I mean, what was it? Real Basic people used to develop in? That was garbage. Why do they do it? Because it was cheap and easy. There you go. Like, why are there so many VBasic developers still around? Because it's relatively easy to do the work they need to do on.
Yeah, and the web is sort of your best investment, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
And now with these embedded web applications on mobile phones, you can run offline, right? We're not just talking about constantly being on the wire. I don't know where this leaves us, but a little sad. My point isn't that...
Actually, if you're right, that's nothing to be sad at all, because one of the things we've struggled with in this show a long time is what happens when you get locked into these platforms and their app systems, and then you totally lose any control. And the web sort of restores some of that. So in a way...
Yes, but
it almost feels like light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, but the web is also a little crazy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for instance, I love AngularJS, right? I'm doing everything in Angular now. It's beautiful because it's got that wonderful data binding stuff I like. But there's Ember, there's Backbone, there's all these other things. And it's not really... I know all you open source people are going to attack me now. But progress would be made a little better if we were all going in the same direction. Which is, of course, Angular, by the way. It's rolling on. I'll give you a great example, and this was going to be the topic for today, but I didn't put it in the notes. The Ionic Framework. If Chris can just throw it on the chat room. Mm-hmm. What Ionic is, it's an AngularJS HTML5 platform for developing mobile apps, right?
Did we talk about this a little bit last week at all?
We talked about it 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
and
okay.
we were going to talk about it. We didn't. This whole thing is basically, it's got some tie-ins to do some nice fast animations, just like every other web mobile platform does, right? So the animations don't look like garbage. But it's based on AngularJS, and it brings you some of that data binding magic. I can get a quick user feed done on this, probably 2 hours. Fully done. UI, everything.
This looks really nice.
The whole bit.
I like their slogan, performance obsessed.
Right, but development speed is amazing in this. Because they picked a lane. They said, you know what, if you're going to use this, you're using Angular, and everything is Angular. You bind everything. You write it once, you bind it. It's awesome. Now it has some problems, like all of these other cross-platform tools, right? Its biggest problem is that it's kind of not mature. I mean, it's more stable than many of its competitors. And under the hood, it's actually Cordova, so you're shipping a Cordova code base.
Okay.
There's, of course, some issues, right? Now you have this big dependency on Angular. So, again, would you want to do that? However, I'm willing to gamble that if I did a native table view with images and an Ionic table view with images, put them both on the same iPhone, and asked Chris to tell me which is which, he couldn't figure it out. Scrolling.
That's nice, man. This is actually kind of exciting.
The place where this falls down is, oh, you want some watch integration? Oh, well, sorry.
Oh, really?
Oh, because it's, you got to do like a native tie-in thing. And
Go frickin' figure, right?
Things get weird. I think this is where we're going. Because in addition to this, they have prefab widgets, prefab templates that you can just come in, use them, and then skin them. Very Visual Studio stuff.
Yeah, right? That does make... I could totally see that, the way things go.
This is a mature market. I mean, if somebody comes to you and says, I want an app, okay, do you want a tab bar app? Do you want a side little hamburger button thing? Or do you just want like a nav controller app? They basically only have 3 options, right? I mean, in tablet, they have a few more, but that's... So there's no reason to constantly write that stuff from scratch.
I'm checking out... They have... so if people want to check this out, IonicFramework.com, and then if you go to IonicFramework.com/examples, they have code samples posted up, and they have a code pen demo, which I'm looking at right now. This is neat.
It is pretty neat.
Look at this. This is neat. Look at these guys.
Oh, what the hell are you doing? Oh,
I'm looking at their pull to refresh code right here. So
Spinners.
Yeah, and I'm looking at their pull to refresh sample code right now, which is nice. I like its bounce. It's got good bounce. That's really cool. I like that they show you it right there too. You really can just jump in if you want to start conceptualizing.
Or playing with it, yeah. But this is my point, right? Not that everybody should go use Ionic. Use whatever you want to use, but we're not in the days of, getting back to a bunch of... Canonical can't ask people to go write things in Qt or Go or Q or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They can't ask people... What was it, Python, right? GTK? They can't ask people to write it in Python. They can barely ask people to write it in Mono, because Xamarin effectively broke that. You got to go with it, and the way it's going is the web. So if you want to support these smaller platforms, if you want to, go where the puck or skate where the puck is probably going,
yeah,
the web.
Yeah, and if you want to be fast too, which sounds like is sometimes a big component of it too, because it can also keep costs down.
Right, development speed fast. Now there's certain things that the web is totally inappropriate for on mobile, right? Like, there's media intensive things and things like that. You're probably still going to go native. But for a lot of this stuff, you could probably get away with web.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel like you kind of got me fired up now. I'm kind of excited. This is really great.
Now, having said that, I spent all weekend writing native Android.
Yeah, right. Right, of course. You did mention that earlier. And maybe that's why you were fantasizing, right? You're looking over there going, oh, man, if only. Oh, boy, if only.
No, you know what it is? Because this I want to integrate very tightly with Android Wear. So it just made sense to go with it. And I'm not sure that there'll be a second platform.
I'm sorry, is Monica asked if there's a humming? Yeah, so, the JB1 Studios is a townhouse that I've owned for many years, and we just converted it into a studio a couple of years ago. But I've owned it for almost 10 years. And it has a yard. And you know what townhouses and communities have? They have covenances. And covenances require that you mow your lawn. And as a small business owner, I really couldn't give a shit about my lawn. And I don't care that if my lawn in my backyard, which is fenced, is mowed or not. But because I get fined if I don't get it mowed, and because this is how it works in a small business, my lawn is being mowed during the only time I am recording a show today. Because otherwise I get fined by the covenants. And none of that has anything to do with show production. That's just an example of what life is like for a small business owner, everybody.
Oh, don't even.
Because couldn't get mowed an hour from now or an hour from... No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. You know what I'm going to do? Just to really make myself upset, I'm going to do an ad read while that's going on. Just to really just to show my sponsors the kind of quality content they can expect on the Coda Radio program, because only the best. And you know what? Now those folks on the Covenants board can rest assured that the JB1 Studios lawns will be mowed. That's good. That's good. All right, so Mike, we have some very thought-provoking feedback actually to get to today. We had a kind of a heated discussion on last week's show, and we sort of left out one of the major contenders, and we totally got called out on it. So first, before we get to that, before we do our make good, I want to mention something that's really good, and that's Linux Academy. In fact, I'd love you to go over to linuxacademy.com/coders and support this show and get the Coda Radio discount. That way you can try it and really get a good experience of what Linux Academy is all about. Linux Academy is a great resource to go learn more about Linux and all the technology and open source projects around Linux that you might use in your day-to-day job or contract work or something you want to get into. Or maybe you've landed a gig and you need to get up to speed fast. They have step-by-step video courses, downloadable comprehensive study guides. I love that the courseware comes with its own server too. It's part of it. They like that VPS is included. And when you choose from the Linux distro to have all your courseware-based stuff, so like Debian and Red Hat, I mean, they got everything, like 7+ distros really. And then you choose that, and then it automatically defines all of the courseware and the virtual machines. That's super slick. And Linux Academy is always rolling out new features. And one of the things that's nice is it's stacked full of Jupiter Broadcasting community members. And I thought about that because not only is that nice just in their forums, you kind of get you get a lift, you get a boost, but you can also sort of connect with Jupiter Broadcasting community members with your profile. This is something they rolled out, I think, towards the end of April. Their profiles are something you can go to populate like your achievements, and you get so it's like linuxacademy.com/user, then /your username, and you have essentially your achievements for the courseware. And it's kind of a neat way to not only show the community what you've done, But you could also include that URL in a resume, or if somebody's looking for references if you worked on, or it's something that, you know, a manager could check at review time. And they also have group accounts too, for those of you who maybe run an IT department. You want to have a few folks get in here and get their skills up to date. They're always rolling out new Red Hat courseware too. That's a big area of focus. AWS is constantly getting updated. Oh, and their OpenStack courseware just got a refresh as well. And of course, they've got technology based around all of the other Linux stacks, like Nginx and LAMP and all, Android development under Linux. And then if you just have a little bit of free time, they've got these nuggets that are rolling out, 2 to 6 minutes of information, 2 to 60 minutes, I should say. You know, just like a deep dive into a specific course. It's really cool. You can, in fact, if you just want to get a sense of that, go to linuxacademy.com/nuggets. Manipulating logs with SED, dig for DNS, user keyloggers, Linux signals. Oh, that's a good one. Console logging with a script utility. These are all just nugget coursewares. Really good stuff over at Linux Academy. Go to linuxacademy.com/coders. linuxacademy.com/coders. It supports this show, keeps us going, and also gets you the Coder Radio discount. That's linuxacademy.com/coders. And a big thank you to Linux Academy for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. linuxacademy.com, a platform for learning made by people who truly care about Linux and open source, so they're super passionate about it, and it really shows. linuxacademy.com/coders. Mike, I wanted to cover a bit of feedback that came in from, let's start with Beef Kai. Beef Kai, and then we'll also get into, then we have another bit of feedback from Little Dan about .NET for business applications. But let's start with Beef Kai. He says, I'm a little disappointed in your watch talk. You so thoroughly ignored Pebble. This was last week's episode. I understand they don't have a budget to compete with Apple Watch or Android Wear, but it definitely feels like Pebble would suit the very least Noah better than either of the heavyweights. It gets in, it gets you notifies, it gets you notifications, does all of those good things. Pebble's approaching the smartwatch market from the right angle. Make a watch. Now make it smart. Apple's approach feels like it's just trying to reverse an iPad and shrink the iPhone. Google's approach feels like it's just really another way to interact with Google. Admittedly, the functionality level is not the same. The difference, though, is that Pebble seems to understand the smartwatch is an extension of your phone, and there are things better done on a larger device. And this was, we were trying to discuss, if I'm a developer and I'm going to make a bet on a Wear platform right now, which is the better platform? I was kind of trying to argue that it's either Android Wear or potentially the Apple Watch when the next SDK comes out. Let's wait and see how watchOS 2 looks. But we didn't really mention Pebble, Mike, and I don't really have a good answer for that. I have a Pebble watch. In fact, I did kickstart back the Pebble Time Steal or whatever it is, the one that's supposed to start shipping at the end of the month.
Right. So I'm not that familiar with how well Pebble's doing.
Well, they sold a lot. I mean, they set like another record on sales.
Yeah. I do wonder, though, how much overlap there is on like the Pebble early adopters and the Apple Watch early adopters or the Android Wear early adopters. Meaning how many formal Pebble users are now using one of the two major platforms, right?
Man, it seems to me, too, like, yeah, did one of them switch, you mean?
Right, so it was like Pebble your intro, right? And then you, when the Apple Watch came out, you plucked down $500 on an Apple Watch. That's what I'm kind of thinking.
You know, but to be fair, what? The base Apple Watch is it really $500?
It's $350.
Is it $250 or $350? $350, yeah. Yeah. I just think that if you are in the market to buy a smartwatch, you probably don't have the cheapest Android device, right?
I would say that. And I would also probably say, you know, if you have an Android phone, it constantly shows you apps that are available for Android Wear, right? So you're probably likely to pick up an Android watch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you have an iPhone, I just don't see that many iPhone users interested in a wearable.
You know, I saw quite a few Apple Watches at OSCON, by the way.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? I don't see many not just picking up the Apple Watch.
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, ran into a few Coder Radio fans at OSCON. They say hi.
Open source Coder Radio fans?
Yeah, well, a lot of OSCON people are not just like the open source advocates. There is a good amount of those. But a lot of OSCON's primary focus is people who are just working with open source in their stack somewhere.
Everywhere, the whole stack.
Pretty much. That's why OSCON's kind of a big show. And so, yeah, there was some developers there that came and said hi. A lot of Apple Watches. I saw a lot of Apple Watches. I saw a lot of Apple stuff actually. Yeah. I usually do at OSCON. So I don't know how Pebble can be successful if it has such limited functionality on the iPhone. The Pebble experience on the iPhone is pretty poor. What you get to do is you get to dismiss notifications and maybe next to track things like that. Next to the skip 30 seconds ahead in your podcast app, maybe if you're lucky. And it disconnects frequently. It's not very good. In my experience, it has gone downhill recently.
So, yeah, the chat room, let me see. Navarro makes a good point. Is that true, what he's saying, that they launched a new Kickstarter for every model?
Well, for every major revision, yeah, they have. In fact, some people have quit the company because they say it's so poorly run.
That's not a sign of health, right?
No, I know.
That's not great. I mean, having said that, if I had an app out there and someone came to me and said, we'd really like Pebble support, and there were enough people, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
No, absolutely. I mean, so there's things I like about it. Obviously, the battery life is killer. It's legit. And the other thing I like a lot about it is it's got the best waterproof. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you, Mike.
That's a good guy.
Yeah. Here's what I'm going to tell you, though.
All week last week.
I have mine on pre-order, my Pebble Time Steel, and on the Kickstarter. Chase has one. It's not the steel. It's the Pebble Time, and it's got two bezels, Mike. It's got double bezel, and the screen is tiny. I took the Apple Watch swimming over my OSCON trip.
That's brave.
Yeah, well, I'm only using it for a while, and I'm giving it a review. It's not a toy. I'm really trying. I'm putting it through its paces as a watch to see how it holds up. And so I took it swimming, took it swimming all day. Let's see, we got down there Tuesday around 1, and we swam for a couple of hours. And I swam for a few hours Thursday before we left, and I wore the watch the whole time.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think, the best thing to say for the reader, right, is, at least for me, I don't have a lot of resources to do anything, so it's hard to not focus on, one or two major platforms.
Yeah. And it seems like you're betting on Android Wear right now, which is pretty solid at this point. It's a pretty, comparatively.
Yeah, I mean, the market share isn't quite what I would like it to be.
Geez, no, Apple Watch has lapped it a few times now. Yeah. They sold more last month than the month before they just came out in their quarterly earnings. And they sold more in the first weekend of Apple Watch than they sold all watches in 2014 Android Wear.
Yeah, it's surprising. I mean, they say they're happy with the progress. It didn't feel like a lot sold, but
no.
I guess the best kept secret in California is the Apple Watch.
Well, at this point, they did say, though, at this point, it's sold better than the iPhone or the iPad had at this stage. And the iPad set records. Right. Azer, I mentioned last week on the show, I'm trying it for a couple of weeks. I have I gave Noah my Android Wear. He's trying that. And I'm trying the Apple Watch until the Pebble Time Steel arrives, and then I'll switch to that.
I mean, eventually I'll get myself an Apple Watch and try it out. Right now, my wife has one, and it's just not that interesting to me.
Yeah, I was watching hers from afar, and so now I'm trying it, and there's definitely differences once you try it. There's some, there's some nice things that are different. But yeah, you know what? I think Android Wear is a very good. Between the two of them, if I was going to pick a watch right now, I'd probably pick Android Wear. If they had a really well-built watch, too, though. That's sort of one of the rough spots right now. But, yeah, it's interesting. All right, so let's read this next one. It came in from Little Dan45 in the subreddit. And he says, hello, I used to be a full-time Linux user, but I started a new company, and it was all Windows, so I started developing applications for them in C#. I've been a C# developer now for 3 years, and I mostly make applications for data entry and reports, and I'm using ASP Web API as the REST service connecting to MySQL. I decided I'm going to start learning new languages, new frameworks, because I prefer to have a Linux server. So my question now is, what would you recommend for me? I have looked at a few options, but I would really appreciate some advice. This is what I've been looking at. C++ or Qt for desktop applications, Python for the REST server, and maybe desktop applications. Ruby on Rails for the REST server, maybe Go all web and HTML, CSS, JavaScript, maybe some Java. I've not done any web apps, so I've not done any web applications so far, but I'm considering it. But then again, I really do enjoy making some good desktop applications. So we have a couple of comments here, but what do you think about a Python server, Mike? Is that what would you rather? What does that make you? How does that make you react when you think of building a Python server for the rest?
We have a few Python servers.
Oh, okay. All right.
Good try, though. Good try. But that was sneaky. No, I mean, if your target application, though, is data entry, you probably could do the whole thing web-based, right? Like a Rails app or a Django app.
Mm-hmm.
And that might do it.
Yeah, I agree. And if I think that's actually a good one because I don't trust. This seems like he's moving around on a whim, and so I would be careful not to
Seems
go.
like he's bored, right? He's bored of that.
Yeah, I would be careful not to go too hog wild. And like Matt, like we were just saying, Mike, earlier in the show, you pointed out that really it's going to be the number one platform if you zoom out. And so you're not going to hurt yourself by going down that route anyways. He also mentioned Ruby on Rails. How does that make you feel?
Well, so I was saying Rails would be fine, right?
Oh, okay.
If you think about what and again, this is always hard, right? But what I'm imagining your application is, customer data, something like that. That's very object-oriented, ready to go, right? Very relational.
Yeah.
So a nice Rails app with a Postgres database would be pretty ideal. I don't know how big or small your needs are. Obviously, if you only have a handful of users, you can almost do anything you want because there's no, needs to scale. The only thing I would say is what's wrong with ASP.NET Web API for what you're doing, right? Because if it's working and if you have, let's say, 4 or 5 other applications you've written for this company, they're all on Web API. It might be weird to transition them over, not only to a new platform, but to a new language, assuming that your current Web API apps are hosted on some sort of IIS server, which I think you said. What is the need to move, right? What's pushing this move?
Is it boredom? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right, and who's going to maintain these? Is it going to be, you leave the company, there's 4 ASP apps, and then you wrote one random Python one, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well said, well said.
Although now with Visual Studio Code, you could probably do it on Linux anyway.
I was just going to say, maybe the last topic for the day today, speaking of Visual Studio at least, Visual Studio 2015 has hit RTM. There's our little jingle for it. Just in time for Windows 10 on Wednesday, too. It's a big week for Microsoft. Oh, wow.
Nobody else.
So, are you downloading Visual Studio 2015 right now?
I am not.
What about Windows 10?
I am not.
You're not even going to load on anything?
Nope. Don't have the hardware.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe is it even worth trying in a VM? Do you get the goodness in a VM? The quote unquote goodness? I don't know. I'm too busy planning a road trip and planning a big announcement. That's what I'm focused on. Who has got time for Windows 10? Well, I suppose I'll have to cover it because it's going to be. Tech Talk comes back this week now that I'm back in town. So I guess I got to read up on it and follow the news for that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Mike, is there anything else we want to talk about today? Do we have any other feedback we wanted to get to? Let me check. I see nothing. Oh, yes, actually we do. We have, this is actually a pretty good one.
The Swift thing, yeah, the functional thing.
So Mr. Functional writes in, and he says, "Hello, Mike and Chris. I just wanted to drop a quick comment in regards to Mike's commentary on Swift. No hate. I believe that the recent shift of languages like Swift, Scala, and Rust towards making functional programming more accessible and useful by mixing useful concepts from that world with the more traditional ones from the imperative world is only a good thing. You see, too often I have come across a bug in a C code base which could have been prevented had C mandated variables to be immutable by default. At the same time, pure functional languages like Haskell are so strict about the immutability that it becomes cumbersome to work with. Languages that merge these two approaches usually strike a nice balance here, plus allow for nice other constructs like pattern matching, traits, and better, safer concurrency, and constructs. In this way, we can actually get many of the useful functional programming techniques out of the academia and into the real world, and that is a good thing." Now, isn't that actually, on a sort of big meta level, your initial reaction to Swift was this is going to make this type of programming more approachable and easier for everybody?
Right, that's the whole point of Swift, right?
That was your main issue with it, though, wasn't it?
Right. The point of Swift is to make it easier for people who don't have that whole... Yeah, I mean, we could say it a little soft, right? If you've never worked on a language like C++ or Objective-C, Swift makes it that you never had to, basically, right? You can just kind of ignore all the wonderful history of ARC and memory management and all that good stuff, which is probably a net positive. I still... I've been doing some Swift just for my own kind of little playing around. I don't think functional works great for UI at all. and I do hear, and I do talk to a lot of people writing Swift, and I can't help but think, are you writing Swift as though it were Objective-C, right? Like that kind of, you could totally do that, and it works, but what's the point?
Yeah, but
no, it's certainly not a bad thing. I mean, the writer makes a good point, that Mr. Functional, that getting these concepts into people's minds, into what they're doing is better. Certainly on the server side, I think the more functional you can go for a lot of things, the better. Not for every application, don't write in. But there's a lot of cases where that makes a lot of sense. But on the client side, I still think that, the whole impotence for OO in the late 80s, early 90s was GUIs, right? Like, that's one of the bigger things that people use OO for. Because it fits really well, right? You have a button, it's an object, you manipulate it. The whole, again, I don't mean to beat on reactive Cocoa too hard, but that's very faux functional, right? Like, that's all the baggage and the mind-bending crap of being functional, but under the hood it's really OO, because Cocoa's OO, and you're not going to be able to get away from that. Which is kind of my same problem with Swift. It's wonderful that Swift can do all this functional stuff, and I agree in many cases it will protect you from stupid mistakes, but the whole Cocoa framework is an OO-based framework. And don't even start me on, like, the core foundation stuff, right? I don't... this is a hard thing, right? Because this could sound really stupid in a year when Apple rewrites a major part of Cocoa to be totally functional. But right now, that's not the case. And again, it could just be me, but it is definitely a strength of Swift that you can write it in an OO way, right?
Yeah.
But it's also kind of like, I almost wish they had gone for it, and I know why they couldn't. I just said, Swift is a purely functional language. It's obvious why they couldn't write it.
They were being pragmatic, to be honest with you.
Right. So, most people are writing Swift as though it were, but don't, Swift, but don't call it Objective-C, right?
Uh-huh.
Or Swift, but don't call it Java is probably really, really what people are doing, but we won't talk about that. Which, I don't know. I mean, again, I'm too much. The pragmatic side of me says, well, if it compiles and it works, it doesn't matter if it's not really functional. But then at that point, there was no need to change languages.
I do grok what Mr. Functional is saying, though, about how it's good to bring these things to the general world. From the academia, basically, out to the real world.
It is, but I question how practical that is when you have this entire, 20-year legacy of what is essentially Cocoa, right? That your entire system's built on, that is very, very not functional. Like, how far can you go down that path? In this particular case, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It would be like...
What's the long-term plan?
And again, people don't get angry, but I think Microsoft and the Microsoft people have this right. F# is not a replacement for C# at all, right? There are just some cases where F# makes a lot of sense, and some places where you would just use F#. But F# is a purely functional language. It is a much more, it is what it is kind of thing, where Swift, I feel like, wants to have its cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
But that's fair. I mean, Swift is definitely aimed at beginners. I think some college is starting to teach Swift.
Oh, yeah. You know it's going to happen, if it hasn't already.
It did happen, I think, it's in Stanford or something.
Wow, that was fast.
So, of course it is. It's not a bad thing, you're right. I mean, more tools are better. I just wonder if it's not bad to be sort of functional and sort of OO at the same time. That's all.
I like it. I would like to hear people's thoughts. Go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact and choose Coda Radio from the drop-down, or you can go to codaradio.reddit.com. In fact, I'd really like you to go there and suggest any topics you'd like to hear us cover in maybe your comments. What about that? Oh my gosh, you could even do those and your votes too. codaradio.reddit.com. Mr. Dominic, is there anywhere you'd like to send people throughout the week?
Nope, but we do something special next week.
Yeah, buddy, what is it?
Let's have a call. You know what? Let's have the users on Reddit suggest topics.
You want to do it? All right, so codaradio.reddit.com. Submit your stories and vote. You can also just vote, and we'll pick the top voted stories. And maybe a few other surprises next week as well. You'll have to tune in for episode 165. We do this show on Monday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern over jblive.tv, jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar for your local time zone. See you next week.